Hello friends and welcome to another support spotlight. Today we're going to be talking about Rubick position 4, who I said was one of the best number 1 in my eyes, but I know that's a little biased. If you check the win rates, he's not going to be above 50%. He's a very tough hero. So if you're picking Rubick, you're picking someone who initially seems straightforward maybe, but due to the complete unique nature of almost every game, spell steal is going to be different every game. So there's a lot of creativity, a high skill cap for good Rubick play. So a lot of fun once you get the hang of it. Might take a little while to get used to it though. Now, if you're picking him, a lot of people will think of the flashy playmaking potential. You steal Magnus RP, Death Prophet, Exorcism, all these big ults. You're making these cool plays. That's definitely part of the kit and some of the reason why Rubick can be really good. You get all those big spells for yourself. But don't undersell the value of just regular old spells. You steal Shackles, but cast them from way further away due to Arcane Supremacy, and they're a longer duration due to your Ultimate's debuff amp. So you have a lot of cool combinations, even with regular spells, and that's what allows Rubick to have very consistent performance in most games, because usually there's a good spell to steal. But one of the downsides to the hero is that when there aren't great spells to steal, you kind of drop off a lot. It's kind of like what the hero's good at, and you're going to aim towards that playstyle pretty much every game. You don't really build the team items your team needs. Nah, you do what you do, and you're going to make that better with your items, but you're not going to flex too much. So that's kind of the idea of Rubick, and I think he fits this meta really well because of another aspect of spell steal that people don't really think about too much, but I'm going to get into that in a little bit because it'll be easier to explain after a bit. Let's talk about the ability build. Fade Bolt, you're going to max first. We're going to get this out of the way because there's not too much room for discussion. It's great in the laning stage because it does some damage, so you can use it to secure range creeps. You can use it to trade with the enemy. It's AoE, it bounces between targets, so you can do both if you time it well. That's great. It does do less damage as it bounces around, so keep that in mind, especially as you think about farming out waves as it hits, as you max it out. There's not much you can really do about it, but just realize it's maybe not as good as other AoE spells, but it still bounces around, and that's great. It's going to be your farming tool to push or defend lanes as you go, and that's how you're going to get your farm as Rubick because you are a bit of a greedy support. In the laning stage, though, I do want to emphasize this damage reduction. Average Rubick players, they just use it for the damage. You hit someone with a nuke, cool. The good Rubick players, you're looking at that damage reduction. At 50 damage, you're reducing about 7 damage from the enemy. So every auto attack for 10 seconds, they're doing 7 less damage. You're going to use that to get good right-click trades, and that's how you really maximize the use of Fade Bolt in the laning stage. Especially as we get into the items, you're going to build some stat items typically, and so that's going to make a big difference in the attack damage every time you use Fade Bolt, and that's how you come out ahead. If they just keep trading you, you're happy with that, you're winning. If they realize, oh, this is a bad time to trade now, they start to run away, then you're going to get in a free couple auto attacks, and that's how you're going to get ahead. So look to use Fade Bolt like that in the laning stage. And that's about all I have to say for this for now. Level 2, you're going to take Telekinesis. Actually, step back. Level 1 Telekinesis, very rare. I really wouldn't recommend it. Its main downfall being that it does no damage. So it lifts and you can reposition. That's cool. So the reason you might take Telekinesis is if you think you can get first blood by lifting someone and stunning them while while your teammates do the follow-up damage and follow-up stuns and kill that guy. Or maybe someone's being a little too cheeky, they're chasing you too far, they step into the tower, level 1, you pick them up instantly, pull them deeper into the tower, maybe body block them a little bit, and the tower is going to probably kill them. So if you think about it like that, that value of telekinesis, allowing your towers or your teammates to do a bunch of damage, then that's cool. In the laning stage though, just lifting someone and moving them within the lane, not usually that powerful because it doesn't have any damage, which the game's not all about damage, but at level 1, non-damaging abilities just aren't very good. So I really wouldn't take this level 1 in most cases. If you're coming back to Dota after a while and you're like, oh, I can cliff people too, right? Yes, it's not as good anymore. Due to courier changes and teleport changes, I miss it as well. I loved cliffing people level 1 as Rubick. Used to be super impactful, so you could take it level 1 instead of Fade Bolt. Nowadays, not really a thing besides for pulling them into the tower or for your teammates. So most of the time, you're going to take Telekinesis level 2. because after you have Fade Bolt and you take a couple good trades, you get them down to about 50%. Then you see them step slightly too far. That's where you lift them up, pull them back even further, and now you have the damage from Fade Bolt, Harass, and your right clicks to finish up the kill, along with your ally, probably a offlaner, right? Position 5 Rubick, not so great. You kind of can do it, not so good. Due to Fade Bolt's AoE, it's worse for position 5s to push out the lane than position 4s, but enough about that. Let's get back to what I was saying. Telekinesis. Your offlaner will now have 2 spells, so even though this does no damage, your offlaner throws in 2 spells or has some passive that does bonus damage or whatever, right? So at level 2, it's got more impact because you and your offlaner have more available to you, but level 1, not so great. So level 2, Telekinesis. Gonna go back to Fade Bolt, and then typically 1 point in Arcane Supremacy. It's got a great value point of 100 cast range and 14 spell length. You'll notice every level after that, still good, but not as good as that first value point. So I rarely would recommend skipping this. This is a very good default start. Now let's talk about Spell Steal here. Let's actually drop this point in Fade Bolt for a second. Spell Steal, knock this out real quick. Pick it up every level you get, in my opinion. In the past, you used to be able to leave this off for extra skill points because it didn't scale that well. But now the debuff amp is attached to this ability and the cooldown drops off significantly. So I would go ahead and grab it every chance you get. Increase the duration of your stolen spells so you can steal a really big ult. And if there's nothing better to take, you don't get in any situation where there's anything for you, you just hold it until you get to use it again. So that's cool. So I would take it any level you get. But now let's come back to this idea at level 6. You have 6 skill points at this point, and every hero is kind of balanced around this. You will typically take 1 spell and start maxing it first. In this case, for Rubick, we're saying Fade Bolt by level 7, it's maxed out. But at level 6, you have 3 points in Fade Bolt. It is not possible for any hero to have 2 spells at level 3, like something like this, right? It's not possible because you just don't have enough skill points. I guess you could do this, right? So never mind. It's possible, but you have to skip your ultimate. If you want to take your ultimate, it's not possible, okay? We've covered that. For Rubick, it is possible because your Fade Bolt is level 3, and then you steal a spell, let's say Dragon Slay from Lena, and she has that at level 3. That's technically, 2 extra levels worth of skill points that you're stealing at level 6. I think this is super cool. This is part of why Rubick can have such a high tempo in the beginning of the game. That's why you want to hit 6 at a very good time. You don't want it delayed. Because suddenly, whereas most heroes are balanced around the fact that they only do a certain amount of nuke damage and right-click damage because of how their abilities scale, Rubick just grabs the next best ability of an enemy hero, and he has 2 great nukes now, Fade Bolt and another spell. Or he has an instant initiate, a follow-up stun that he's stolen, that's level 3, and still some nuke damage. Like, whatever combo you grab, you have a lot of potential here from extra skill points that no one else has available, really, because you're stealing them from other people. So this allows you to play at a very fast tempo compared to others. The other cool thing about it is that your ultimate is always stealing new spells. So like Enigma, he uses ult. He has to wait like 3 minutes, right, before he can use his next ult, so he's going to have a very down period there. You steal Black Hole when he uses it. You Black Hole someone. Do you have to wait for 3 minutes? No. You steal a new spell, and now you're playing very active with that. And then when Enigma uses Black Hole again, you steal that again, and then you Black Hole. So whereas other heroes with long cooldowns have these down periods and they can't do too much, Rubick does not suffer from that so long as there are better spells to steal, which most games there are. So that is something really cool about Spell Steal that I think a lot of people don't think too much on. But I think it's why he's such a cool hero right now. In this fast-paced meta with a lot of heroes with good spells, everyone trying to play to their tempo, you just fit that tempo and you go even faster. So that's why I like Rubick so much. Let's get back to the rest of the abilities now. Most games, you can just go ahead and max Arcane Supremacy because it has extra cast range. That's going to make it easier to spell steal and then use that spell with an increased duration. So for example, you lift from really far away and then shackle from really far away after having stolen shackle from very far away. The cast range just works out great. Spell Amp is cool, but you're not really there for spell damage too much as a support. You kind of are sometimes, but not usually too much. It's more about this long range initiate and maybe some good wave clear in some games. So I really like the cast range. However, some games there are not good spells to steal, and you need a lot of lockdown due to mobile enemy heroes. And in that case, I would go ahead and max telekinesis first. On its own, not the best, 1.2 seconds to 2.1 seconds. Whereas, I'd rather steal another spell that has like 2.5 seconds of stun. Now you get lift plus 2.5, that's better. But if there's not a lot of stuns on the enemy team, or they're very difficult to steal or use, you might just need to get telekinesis first, especially if the enemy's got like storm spirits, ember spirits, anti-mages, like those kind of heroes, the ones. Then you might have to just grab telekinesis. But if you have the choice, do Arcane Supremacy. I think it's better. But sometimes you'll see a mix too, something like, 3 points, and that's enough. Now my teammate has Blink Stun or whatever, so now I'll go back to Arcane. Like, you'll see some variety here, but if you're really not sure, just go ahead and max Arcane Supremacy, which you'll notice I'm maxing at level 10. I personally don't think the 10 talent is all that great. If you need to be really greedy, Telekinesis landing damage does allow you to farm waves between Fade Bolt and Telekinesis, but you could probably just steal some other AoE ability, and that plus Fade Bolt would do the damage to kill a wave. So I'm not a huge fan of this, but you can grab it. And for level 10, this is good combined with like what you have. It brings up to 45 base damage reduction. If the enemy is like very stat heavy carry like Drow, then you can reduce a bunch of their damage. And then in that case, I like this one. But at level 10, carries usually aren't that strong. That's not true. They're kind of strong, but you may not need this quite yet as compared to like a few levels down the line. So level 10, I don't think is worth the talent. I go ahead and finish maxing Arcane Supremacy. Now, if you want to take the talent after that, go ahead. But I kind of think Telekinesis points are better than that. So I go ahead and max Telekinesis after that. And at level 15, you take a talent, which still don't take the level 10 talents, because at level 15, I think those talents are pretty good. If it's a game where you have to max Telekinesis, the enemy doesn't have a bunch of stuns, and you really need some kind of extra lockdown, then you can take the Telekinesis, lift duration, bring this to a 2.7 stun. But most games, there's usually a really good spell to steal. Even if it's just one. There literally just needs to be one stun, one high damage ability, whatever. And then this talent will be better because you get that stun at a reduced cooldown, and it gives you the chance to chain stuns very easily with yourself. You can throw the stun out, lift, throw the stun out again. And because of your extra debuff, it will probably work out. And if not, you probably have like one teammate who maybe has a stun as well or something, to help you complete that chain stun. So level 15, really good. Or, of course, if you take those big flashy spells, you get them at a lower cooldown. Again, going back to the idea that you can play at a faster tempo than the enemy can, there you go. Level 16, now you can grab your level 10 talent, which I actually like Fade Bolt damage in most of my games because I think I can reduce the enemy's damage. But from what I've seen, 175 Telekinesis landing damage is actually a little more popular. And I don't know, it lets you farm, lets you add a little bit more damage. I'll leave it up to you, but I kind of like the Fade Bolt damage. From there, your other talents you'll just grab as you go. Level 20, if you're going to get the Shard, you'll want this talent no matter what, just because you can then save your teammates or throw them in from further away. If you're not getting the Shard, you might still typically want this just because repositioning the enemy is very powerful. But the Fade Bolt duration, especially if you're against summons, illusions, those kind of things, you need to be like the only wave clear. This is really good. It brings Fade Bolt down to 6 seconds, and you can just constantly throw this out, do a lot of damage in fights. Plus, if you got this talent, on its own, already permanent uptime, 10-second debuff, 10-second cooldown. But if they have some kind of dispel, and you want to keep applying this because they're only building stat items, then there you go, also good for it. But we'll put it here. And then at level 25, you're a support, so you're not really here for damage too much. 12 seconds off of Telekinesis is really good. 10 seconds, we're talking about this idea of solo chain stunning people. When this is only 10 seconds, it makes it a lot easier, right? Stun, lift, stun, lift. It's kind of crazy. So the more chances you get to instantly lift people up in the late game. At this point, any kill is massive, so I'm a big fan of this one. Especially if you got the shard, you want this on a lower cooldown so you can like constantly move people around. Some games you get real farmed, Refresher, Octarine, Ags, all of that stuff. You know the games, and there are really good spells to steal. That's the time when you can try to carry. You can take this spell amp stolen damage, like you're stealing Eclipse, you're stealing, I don't, what's another big magic damage ult, I don't even know. Then you can go for this. But I think in most games, the 12 seconds is probably safer. For items, you don't have to think too hard for your first couple. Honestly, you really follow the same item build. Like I said, Rubick does what Rubick does. Your hardest choice might actually be at the start, what kind of build to do. So in the past, starting with just brown boots and tangos was actually pretty common. It has dropped off a bit as roaming's no longer as good, so you don't need the move speed as much. You can still do it if you need to drag creep waves, or you will be roaming and stacking a lot, or the enemy is like double melee lane, or someone like Death Prophet, who you really need to avoid, otherwise you'll lose. It's like very difficult to get a winning trade if they are chasing you, so you kind of have to back off and pick the fights you want with boots. That's when you would get boots. But most of the time nowadays, you're doing something stat or consumable heavy, really buffing up your right click so that when you do use Fade Bolt, that's how you get that big difference. You're suddenly doing like 15 extra damage than the enemy because you're buying like, for example, that was one build you could do, right? You can also do, if you think you can get away with it, you can start with like the Null Talisman components and finish a Null Talisman earlier. Like I said, you got a lot of spells to steal, a lot of extra spell cost, so this actually pays off, just getting one at the start. And then you can even continue to buy like Iron Branches, things like this, and suddenly you have 9 extra damage, which is kind of crazy. And then you remove, let's say, 7 damage from the enemy. It's just this huge difference. You're getting way better trades than they should be. So going a stat-heavy consumable build on Rubick has allowed him to play more aggressively in the lane lately, and I think that is pretty safe. But you kind of do whatever you need. You know, you think you need a mango, you can grab that. You think it's a good stake game, go ahead. You have some flex, you know, like sentries, you need to block camps, whatever. So this part, you know, I can't give you like a perfect build, but something like what we had up here at the start is probably pretty safe. Switch this with a mango if you think you need to. Anyways, let's move on from there. This will be pretty quick. Arcane Boots, you want to rush this. It's just useful. You're playing at a fast tempo with your team, so you need to provide mana to all of them, but you also need mana yourself because you're stealing spells, using them, so you need a bigger mana pool, need mana regen, Arcane Boots. Wand after that, just to get more charges for more mana for more of your spells. After that, you want Aether Lens because extra cast range on top of your passive, plus any neutral items you manage to grab, it's just going to make your cast range nutty, and you're going to be like stunning off the screen across. So it pays off to really stack cast range on Rubick. But of course, it's also a great mana item, so that'll help you, as I've said, with all your extra spells and all your extra mana costs. From there, Blink, don't always need to get it, but it can be good. Lets you instantly jump in range and steal the spells you need. Don't forget, Blink also is benefiting from all your extra cast range, so you can blink like insane distances as Rubick. But if you manage to steal, for example, RP from Magnus, you kind of need the blink. You can't really just like walk in and ult. It doesn't really quite work out unless they don't realize you have it. So having a blink dagger allows you to use some of those big spells you've stolen. It's also really good with your telekinesis because telekinesis is an instant lift, instant disable. So you blink in, instantly lift. It can be one of the ways to start a fight on a Storm Spirit, Ember Spirit, Anti-Mage, all those mobile heroes we talked about earlier where it's very hard to kill them. The blink matches your instant initiate and allows you to get kills. After blink, or say you don't need the blink, any of these items will be fine. Force Staff, typically a good item, helps you reposition, get in range to use your spells, or say budget blink, Force Staff in, use your big stolen spell. If the enemy has abilities that are affected by Shard, then you will get those effects as well if you have Shard. So there's kind of 2 reasons you might buy the Shard. Is that reason that I just explained, say Scatter Blast from Snapfire. If you get a Shard and you steal Scatter Blast, you now have an extra stun because of it. So it can be really good because of that. Or the actual Shard for yourself allows you to use Telekinesis to save your teammates, kind of like a pseudo Force Staff. So if you think that's really useful to save your teammates, then you might get a Shard. You might be wondering, why would I buy a Force Staff instead of a Shard then if Shard is cheaper? Telekinesis can be used aggressively or defensively, but not both at the same time because it's got a cooldown. So, if you think you need your instant lift for those mobile heroes like Storm Spirit, you might need the Force Staff then instead to save allies because you won't. Then you have the option to use both. You can use the Force Staff defensively, lift aggressively. And then later, if you do pick up a shard, then you have like tons of options, right? Either one can be used defensively or aggressively. But that's why you might pick Force Staff. Plus, it actually has stats and health, so that'll help you survive, help you have more mana, whereas the shard does not have any of that. Aghanims, pretty cool item, allows you to steal multiple spells now. So there are some really cool combos which can allow or now be opened up by Aghanims, but not every game has that. So you don't need to always go Aghanims. Sometimes there's only like one good spell, in which case, don't even bother, spend your money on something else. But sometimes there are tons of crazy good spells, and so that's when Aghanims can help you out a lot, so you can get more of those awesome spells, have a lot of impact that way. Besides that, you might get something like Ghost Scepter to survive, Yules to provide yourself mana and regen, but also remove any silences from yourself, or just use it being helpful in the team, because you need to like Yules Ursa, something like that. These are honestly the most common items on Rubick. You actually don't see too many others. You don't see him building drums that often, or like Solar Crest or Vlad's, things, team items. That's not the Rubick life. Rubick life is stealing good spells and using them and staying alive in order to steal good spells and use them. And it's not about buffing up your ally with the drums. It's buffing up your ally with Alacrity that I stole. Woohoo, look at that. So things like that. You will typically always build items like this rather than, any of the other kind of support items. Not saying that's a hard rule. You can do like Lotus Orbs, stuff like that, Glimmers when you need to, so on and so forth. But this will typically be most of your itemization in every game. That is it. Thank you for watching. I love this hero. He's a ton of fun. If you want a challenge, you want a unique game every time, Rubick would be great for you. He is tough. Expect to lose the first couple games you play Rubick. Here, bonus tip. Common trap that I fall in myself. Going too hard on spell steal. Always trying to steal the big spells. Putting yourself way too far in danger to grab a spell. And then just dying right after that. Who knew blinking into the enemy to steal a spell, but then instantly being killed wasn't a great idea? Not me, apparently, for however many games it took to learn that lesson. But there's the tip to you before you get into Rubick. Don't go too crazy with it. Still be smart, be safe, use your long cast ranges, and wait for the right time to steal those spells. That is the hard part of Rubick, is that patience and that awareness of seeing all the spells be used. So that's why he has such a high skill cap and why you can always be improving on it and using your creativity. And good luck on that, because it's a lot of fun, but it's hard. Bye!